In today's experiment, we're looking at Newton's first law of motion. An object at rest remains at rest, and an object in motion remains in motion unless acted upon by a net force. We're going to be looking at the first part of this, the object at rest. So for an object to be stationary or static, the net forces on it must add to zero. So if you add all the forces acting on an object, add the vectors of those forces, then they should add to zero. So you can do that with the component method or with the graphical method. Either one will work. But if you do that, then you should see that the net force, or the total force when you add all of those up, should add to zero. And so we're going to be looking at this not up and down, but in the plane of this table here for this experiment. So we need to have some weights. These ones are going to act as our forces. They're going to exert forces out in the directions that we pull them. And then we're going to counteract that with the spring balance. So that one is going to be supplying our opposing force that will balance the forces applied by our weights. So the weights for this experiment, we're going to be using pennies. We'll have 100 pennies, and then we're going to have them hanging over some pens. These will be acting like our pulleys. We don't have pulleys in the lab kit, but we're going to be using these pens. The friction is very low, so the pennies will be hanging from little strings and pulling on the forces, exerting forces in different directions, and those will be balanced by our spring balance here, which will exert the opposing force. So we've got several things here in our experiment kit today. We've got the 100 pennies, and then we've got some paper clips, some heavy-duty thread, like sewing thread, and you'll need a ruler and this protractor. This is a printed protractor. It's 360 degrees rather than just the 180 degrees. And then we've got our pens, like I said. You'll need some tape, and then we've got this wood block here, and that will provide a different angle for the forces to exert at. Okay, so the first part for our setup is going to be creating weights from the pennies. And hopefully you've already followed the instructions and done this ahead of time, but if you haven't, I'm just going to walk through it real quick. It won't take too long, but it will take a little bit of time here to get them bundled up together. So I've already got them stacked in groups of 10, and what I need to do now is tape those bundles, tape the stacks of 10 into bundles so that each one is a contained unit. And I'm going to go ahead and use Scotch tape for that. So I'm just going to go ahead and speed through that. You just take your stack of pennies, make sure that each stack has 10 pennies in it. And then I'm just going to wrap the tape around it. So I've got the top of the penny here, and then I'll just wrap the tape around the top of it, or start on the top maybe, and then wrap it around the bottom, and the bottom again with the other end of the tape. So you end up with that, and then just kind of smooth it all in, tuck the tape in, kind of just press it against the pennies so you get a nice tight unit like this. And I'm going to do that with all 10 of these stacks here, and then we'll move on to the next step. Now that we've got all of the pennies taped in bundles of 10, we're going to make two different larger types of bundles. So just go ahead and take 3 of them, make 2 groups of 3 and 2 groups of 2. So I've got my 4 different groups here, 3, 3, 2, and 2. Okay, so then what you're going to do is take a long piece of Scotch tape. So you're just going to take the 3s and then just tape them all around together. So you put the one piece of tape that wraps around all 3 of them. So it kind of makes like a triangle. I'm just going to go ahead and wrap all the way around. So I've got it around the 2 right now. And then I'll just put the other one here to make the third point of that triangle. And then just stretch the tape tight around them so that you end up with something like this. Okay, so just tuck that in, make sure that's nice and tight, and then I'm going to go ahead and do the other way, do that again with the 3 here. So you just attach the 2, and it looks like the tape that I got this time may not be long enough, so I may have to add another piece of tape in addition. got another group of 3 now. And then with the groups of 2, you'll do the same thing. You'll just wrap it all the way around the outside of the 2 so that you have those together. Okay, so I've got my 4 groups here, 3, 3, 2, and 2. So now what I want to do is take 2 paper clips, we'll start with 1, and then just bend it. So I'm going to bend, like you've got these 2 loops kind of, you've got the larger outside part and then the inside part. So I'm just going to grab that and bend it to 90 degrees so that I have something like this. So I've got it bent 90 degrees like that. And then just take the larger part here and squeeze it together so that you kind of pinch it off into a loop like that. So I've got it bent at a 90-degree angle, and then the loop at the end of it here is bent like a loop. So I'm going to do that with 2 of them, and then we'll go on to the next step here. Okay, so we've got 2, and then what you're going to do is just take it and poke it through the center of these 3. So it's kind of like a hole in the center. I dropped it. So just right in the center here, just poke it through so that it goes in one side and out the other. And then that'll kind of act like a little loop. You can hang it like that. So do that with both of the stacks of 3. Okay. One of these you're going to leave as is for right now. We'll change it later. But then take one of them and tape a stack of 2, or a group of 2 here, underneath this group of 3. So you can just use tape as needed to do that. I'm just going to put that under there and just wrap a nice piece of tape all the way around so that that holds it to the larger stack. Okay, so we've got it just like that. I've got a stack now, or a bundle with 5 groups in it here, so that's 50 pennies, and then a group with 3 in it. So these are going to be our 2 weights for the first part of the experiment, and then for the second part, we'll tape the other group of 2 to the bottom of this so that we have 2 of them just like this. For now, I'm just going to set that aside. I'm not going to use it for right now. Alright, so let's get rid of the tape, and then the next part we need is the threads. So you're going to want 3 different lengths. 2 of them you're going to want to be 50 centimeters long, and then the other one you'll want about 30 centimeters long. And at the end of each one, you're going to tie loops. So I've got a loop tied in 2 of these already, so you'll have loops at both ends. You don't want to use slip knots. If you use slip knots, then the loops, the knots here are always changing. You want them to be stable. So I've got them already tied here for my 30 centimeter one and one of the 50 centimeter ones. Then I'm going to take the other one here and just demonstrate that real quick. So you don't have to do the same kind of knot I'm doing, but it's an easy one. I think it's called the overhand loop knot. So you'll just take that and kind of wrap it around and tie it. And I know that's not going to be very easy to see on the camera, but you'll get the idea. So you just tie a loop knot on the end of each one. So here I've got the knot on that end, and then I'll do the same on this end. And at the end, with all 3 of these strings, it doesn't matter if the length is exactly the same, but you do want the ends, the lengths to be about the same for like for the 2 50 centimeter ones, and then the 30 centimeter one is going to be a little bit shorter. So let me just go ahead and finish getting this knot tied. May take a little practice to get the knots right, and if you have to, you could double up the knots if it doesn't hold. Make sure that it's nice and tight. You don't want it coming undone while you're doing the experiment. So just get that nice and tight. Okay, so I've got that one there, and then I've got this one. So those are a little bit different lengths, but just use them as you need to for the purposes that you got here. Okay, so then what you got to do, take the other 3 paper clips and put 1 paper clip on the end of each string. So you just thread that on there. So I've got one on that one, and then I'll put one on each of the other 2. Okay, So these longer ones are going to support the hanging weights, and then the shorter one is going to be connected to the spring balance. So what we want to do, before we go any further, we need to weigh these. So you want to check the weight with your spring balance and then record the masses of each one of those. Before you do that, again, you need to make sure that you can zero it. So you just hang it by your top ring and then adjust that so that it's zeroed with the mark right here needs to be at the 0 mark. So I'm just going to go do that real quick. Okay, so now I've got this balanced, or zeroed out rather, and then I'm just going to hang each one of these on here. You can decide which one is mass 1, which one is mass 2. Anyway, you're going to record the mass of each one of those, so I just hang that on there, and then hang this one on here. That'll give you the masses, and then just write those down on paper or wherever you want to record that. Okay, so for this next setup, let's clear some space. We want to have some room here to work. Make sure that your table or your counter or wherever you're doing this is large enough that you can kind of spread these things out. The size is not exactly the most important thing, but you need to make sure that you get your angles right and make sure that everything is hanging over the edges properly. So what we want to do now is just take our pens, and you can go ahead and remove the caps from each of the pens. So these ones will be acting kind of like pulleys. These strings, these threads will be hanging over them, and then they'll be kind of sliding on them, and hopefully the friction will be pretty low. So just take the caps off of each one of these, and then you're going to use duct tape for this. So just go ahead and tear off some strips of that. And you probably don't need the full length strip or the full width strip, so you can split them in half if you need to. And then we want to measure from the corner of our table about 10 centimeters in. And so that's about right here. So I'm going to put the first pen right there. And it doesn't have to be exactly right there. Make sure that you turn the writing down. So right now I've got the writing up here. Make sure you turn that down so that the string doesn't slide on that, because if it does, that will create some extra friction. So just tape this one here right on the top edge of the table. You can kind of wrap the tape around underneath. Make sure when you're doing this, you can test your table. Like I've got a plastic table here. The tape's not going to cause any problems, but if you've got, like say, a kitchen table or something, the tape might cause problems, might pull off some of the finish. So maybe check it in a discreet place so that in case that it is, then you won't have ruined your table. So okay, I've got that taped on here. We'll add more tape later, but you've got that right there. Then you're going to take your second pen, again have the writing turned in, and you'll place it right here and tape it like that. So let me just get another piece of tape real quick. So it'll kind of nestle into that gap here. There's kind of like a gap between the bottom edge of that table and the bottom of the pen and the edge of the table. So you can kind of just tuck that in there. Again, make sure that the writing is turned in, and then you can tape that one on there as well. So when you do this, you should see that the top pen here kind of raises it up above the surface of the table a little bit, and then this other one kind of extends it out from the edge just a little bit. That way the string is able to rest on both of these pens, and it doesn't touch the table, and it doesn't touch the edge of the table. So the top surface, this one keeps it up, and then the side, this one keeps it up. Now you're going to do the same thing on this other edge of the table. So you need to again measure 10 centimeters in. So I'll just do that here with my ruler. And looks like 10 centimeters is about there. So I'm just going to put that right there as a placeholder. Get some more tape. Right, so when you do this, make sure that you are taping it closer to the ends of the pens. That way you have more of the length to work with. So you want to have room here to play with your string, just in case it doesn't want to line up exactly where you would want it ideally. Just make sure your tape is to the ends of the pen. That way you have more room to work with. Okay, so I've got those applied there. If you're worried about it unsticking and coming undone, you could add more tape up here. I think this is pretty stable for right now, so I'm just going to leave it like that. So what you want to do now is set up all of the pennies and the strings here. So I've got my long, yeah, that's a long one, and then another long one. Here, let me just get some of this stuff out of the way. Alright, so long one, and short one. Okay, so what you want to do now is take your paper clips that are on the ends of the threads and use them like hooks, and you can just kind of hook them onto the top of the weight so that you can hang it nicely like that, and it's easy to take it on and off. So just do that real quick with both of these, so you'll have one thread for each one. Those are attached like that, so I've got both of them hanging like that. And then the other one, you're going to take the open loop, the one that doesn't have the paper clip on it, and hook that on your spring balance. So I'm just going to set that right like that, and then hang this one over the edge of the table. Or maybe, let's wait just for a moment because that'll yank it off as soon as I do that. So take the open loops on both of these threads and hook them on this paper clip that comes from the spring balance. So this paper clip from the spring balance is going to act like the center of all three of these strings. It'll be the intersection point for all of them. So now I've got them all here like this. Let me just kind of spread that out so you can see. So we've got the pennies here, and the spring balance here. And all of these are connected by these threads. So you just take one of these. Whoa! Okay. That will happen. So just be aware of that. So you hang one of them over like that. You're going to have one over each side of the table here. One will hang over these pens. One will hang over these pens. Maybe try to keep them from swinging too much. That might exert some extra forces or something. Okay. So that's what we're going to want to do. Before we do that, though, here, let's relieve the force on our spring balance and just check and make sure if we kind of pull this a little bit and just check to make sure that it's still fairly zeroed. I'm just going to adjust mine a little bit, and I adjusted it way too much. So just check for that. Make sure that it's zeroed now in this horizontal orientation. So that looks good. I'm just going to pick these back up here so that it doesn't pull it off the table again. And then what you want to do is just get a piece of duct tape and use that to tape your spring balance down to the table. So just take the spring balance like this. It has this top loop. Just kind of stick the tape through the loop, and you can kind of wrap it around, tape it kind of like that. And that'll give you something that you can tack down on the table. So we're not going to put it down yet, but just have it ready. So then you're going to take your two strings here, make sure that they're still connected. Let the one hang over like that. If they get twisted, probably want to untwist them. Okay, so we've got those two hanging over the table, and then you're going to take this one with the spring balance and stretch that out. So you'll stretch that out and make sure that these ones cross the pens at 90 degrees to the pens, so the strings should be 90 degrees to the pens. So just kind of play around with the position of the spring balance so that you get everything nice and balanced that way. So I'm just going to kind of shift this around. That looks fairly good. So what you want to do is you just kind of get it generally lined up where it wants to be. So I'm just going to take this one and tape the tape for the spring balance down so everything is more or less stable right now. Then what you want to do is you reach down and you just grab the loops here, or grab the weights here that are hanging, and just lift them both up a small amount so that it kind of relieves the pressure, and then kind of let them fall again. So you just do that a couple times, and you just make sure that everything is balanced. So now, as I did that, all the forces kind of readjusted. These ones now look like they're nice 90 degrees, and that one is where it wants to be. So this is it. That's the final setup. Last thing we need to do is put in our protractor so that we can measure the angles. And if there's not room, like if there's not room with the border here, like there's a nice, big border around it, it's just printed on a sheet of cardstock. If there's not room, then you will have to cut around the circle. I'm not sure if I need to do that in this case. It looks like it might fit. So you want to line this up so that you have 0 degrees at this one and the 90 degrees at this one. And then this one is going to be at some other angle. So you just line this up so you have the 0 degrees right below, so you look straight down, and then you line up your 0 degrees here with this string, and make sure that the 90 degrees is on the other string, and it looks like it is. And then the end of this paper clip, somewhere in the middle of that end, like if you imagine like there's a circle on the end of the paper clip, that's going to be your center. So you just line that up then with the center of the protractor circle. And again, make sure that 0 degrees and 90 degrees are still lined up, and then that's it. Okay, so now that this is all balanced, all you need to do is take your measurements. So you're going to have 3 forces. You'll have F1, F2, and the spring balance force. So F1 is going to be mass 1 times gravity, F2 is mass 2 times gravity, and then the spring balance force is just the force in newtons that you'd read directly on your spring balance. Then you're also going to get your 3 angles, 0 degrees, 90 degrees, and this one looks like it's around 210.5 maybe. So you get each of those angles, each of those forces, and record that in your on your paper, sum them up, and complete the analysis with that. So for the second part of this, we're going to replace the 90 degree pens with a wood block so that we'll put them at a different angle than 90 degrees. And that's what we're going to do now. So just move the protractor out of the way, grab your weights and your spring balance, set those ones to the side, grab your wood block. It's a triangle here, 90 degree triangle here, 90 like this, and then this angle is 45 degrees. So just remove the pens here and leave those ones there. Those ones are going to stay put. So just pull that off right now. And then you're going to use tape to attach this one to the edge of the table. So this one you're going to want maybe about 22 centimeters away from the corner. So again, just use your ruler, line that one up. So 22 looks like it's about there. I'm not having it pointing up like this, but this edge here is the 22 centimeters from the corner. So just get enough duct tape. And I'm just going to pull this down here. So this one is going to kind of be like an extension of the top of the table. And you can just tape it directly to the table like that. Make sure that your pieces of tape are long enough. This piece of tape wasn't. So get some nice long pieces of tape. And then just kind of wrap that around the wood block. Should keep it upright like that. And then wrap it underneath the table as well, so that holds it tightly there. Just keep adding enough tape until you're satisfied that it's not going to move on you. Okay, that seems pretty solid there. Then you're just going to take your pens and put them back on here. If you separated them, yeah, so it looks like I'm going to have to take off some of the tape here and just retape these. So I can probably just reuse these strips of tape. Okay, so I've still got 4 strips of tape. The process now is exactly the same, except now this is the edge of my table instead of the actual edge of the table. So just put these on here. Again, make sure that the writing on the pens is turned in so that that's away. And just tape this first one on top, the top of the thing there. And also, again, make sure that you have enough room to have some leeway to slide the strings around on there. So just tape this right on the edge of the block. Okay, so you just get it nice and lined up like that. This is now your new edge of the table. It looks exactly like this. It's just on this edge of the block. So once you've got that, then the process is exactly the same. We're just going to take our 2 weights, and in this case, we do need to tape the other group of 2 to the bottom of this group of 3. Otherwise, the angles are going to be kind of weird. So, okay, so I've got that. Okay, so that one's going to go over that side. This one will go over this side. You will need to re-weigh them. So I didn't do that here, but if you know which one was your original, like I think this one was my original group of 5, so that one you could just use the same weight. But this one, you'll have to weigh that again on the spring balance. And you could do it afterwards, I guess, if you wanted to. Alright, so let me just get these lined up here, kind of position that so they're roughly centered. So I've got this one here at 90 degrees to these pens, and then this one is at 90 degrees to those pens. So just stretch that over here and unstick your spring balance. Connect that on there. Okay, so just make sure that these are lined up nicely. Kind of adjust them until you get roughly 90-degree angles on each one of them. So somewhere around there looks pretty good. I've got 90 degrees to that one, 90 degrees to that one. So I'll just tape the spring balance down to the table. Okay, so then what you want to do, again, just reach down, grab both of these weights, and kind of lift them up a little bit. Let them pull and kind of balance out. Make sure that that's nice and balanced. Okay, so that looks pretty good. We've got 90 degrees here, 90 degrees here, and that one then would be the right angle. All right, so again, just take your protractor. 0 degrees is still going to be on this side. So I'll just line that up, and again, if you have to cut it, you can, but you may not need to. Alright, so because this is a 45-degree angle, this one should be at 135 degrees. So you can check for that, line up the center, line up the 0 degrees, and that looks pretty good. So this one is at 0, and then this one, it looks like it's not quite at 90 degrees, so I'll shift it just a slight bit. So now it is right at 135 degrees on this protractor. We've got 0 degrees, 135, and then this one looks like it's maybe around 247 or so. So just let go of that, and this is your final setup. So you record the 3 forces again. You'll have F1, which is again mass 1 times gravity, F2, which is mass 2 times gravity, and the spring balance force, which you'll read directly on here. Then you'll also read your 3 angles, the 0 degrees, 135, and then whatever this angle is, depending on your setup for that. And that's going to be it. Make sure you take any pictures before you wait too long. Don't wait too long. Take the pictures as soon as you can. This tape on the spring balance will eventually unstick and come loose, and everything will fall off the table. The weights will just pull it off. So make sure you get any setup pictures early on, and anything that you need for the data, record that as soon as you're done here, and then you can do your analysis the same as with part 1, where you'll have your 3 forces and your angles, and you'll sum them up and compare the angles and the forces according to how the write-up explains. And that'll be it. So good luck with that. This one, again, it's kind of complicated on the setup, but once you've done this, at least once you've done part 1, part 2 is pretty easy. And then the analysis is, again, basically the same. You'll just use different angles and forces for those. Also, make sure to read the instructions carefully in your lab documents, and good luck on your experiment.